Today we are diving into the life of Edgar Mitchell, the sixth person to walk on the moon.
Wow.
But what's really fascinating about Mitchell isn't just the moonwalk, is how his life changed after Apollo 14.
Yeah, 1971, he's back on Earth,
Right.
and it seems like something fundamental shifted for him.
It really does.
He goes from being focused on like the hardcore science of space to thinking about like the bigger meaning of it all.
And that's what we're going to try to understand today.
Exactly.
We've got excerpts from a book by his wife, Anita, called From Outer Space to Inner Space. An astronaut's wife reflects on the moon mission and its mysteries and some research papers. And we're going to use those to see if we can figure out how this transformation happened.
Sounds fascinating.
So one of the things that keeps coming up is this overview effect.
Oh, that's a good place to start.
Can you break that down for us? What is that?
Well, so lots of astronauts have described this cognitive shift
Okay.
when they see Earth from space.
Right.
It's like this tiny little fragile ball of life
Oh, wow.
hanging in the vastness of space. And
So you see it as like a whole...
yeah, and it changes like how you understand your place in everything.
So it's not just an intellectual concept. It's like
It's an experience.
a visceral, wow, we're just this tiny little
Yeah.
thing.
Exactly.
Do you think that's part of what propelled Mitchell into like thinking about huge existential questions, like even the stuff that seems unrelated, like UFOs and consciousness?
You know, I think it's pretty common, actually. The overview effect makes people start asking about humanity's place in the universe.
Makes sense. You're literally seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those UFO claims.
Okay.
He was very public about the government covering up evidence,
Right.
specifically about the 1947 Roswell incident.
Yes, Mitchell was totally convinced that Roswell involved an alien spacecraft.
He was sure.
He said he even spoke to high-ranking military officials who confirmed it for him.
Well, the idea of aliens is definitely intriguing,
Yeah.
I'll admit, but I'm always skeptical.
Understand.
I need a bit more proof than just someone's word, even if they walked on the moon.
That's fair.
What does the scientific community say about all this?
Well, NASA and like most of mainstream science are not buying it.
They're not convinced.
They say there's no real evidence to back up Mitchell's claims.
So, a lot of unanswered questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, he didn't just stop at UFOs, though.
No, he didn't.
He went on to found the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
IONS.
IONS, yeah. What exactly are Noetic Sciences?
Basically, it's the study of consciousness and how it can like influence reality, almost like bridging science and spirituality.
So the idea that our minds can affect the world around us,
Kind of.
like mind over matter, that sounds like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah, it does sound a bit out there, but it's connected to quantum mechanics.
Quantum mechanics. So we're getting into some really complex physics here.
Yeah, but it's super interesting.
So how does this idea of consciousness influencing reality actually work in quantum physics?
It's a bit mind-bending, but there are experiments in quantum mechanics, like the double slit experiment,
I've heard of that.
where they found that just by observing something,
Mm.
you can change what's happening at a really fundamental level.
Really? So just by looking at something, you can change it?
Well, it's not
Okay.
quite that simple, but the act of observation seems to play a role.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What did Mitchell have to say about this?
Well, he believed these principles from quantum mechanics could be applied to consciousness.
Okay.
Like, he saw consciousness as a force in the universe.
It's a force.
Yeah, that can actually interact with and influence matter.
So he wasn't just talking about theoretical physics. He thought this could have real-world consequences.
Yeah, he and the researchers at IONS looked into all sorts of phenomena, things like remote viewing,
Remote viewing.
where people claim they can see things happening far away.
Wow. So we've got the overview effect, maybe pushing him to question our place in the universe. Then the UFO claims, and now we're talking about quantum mechanics and consciousness-shaking reality.
It's quite a journey.
It really is.
And remember, we have this unique window into his transformation, thanks to his wife Anita and her book.
Yeah, from outer space to inner space. It's like literally going from exploring outer space to the inner space of consciousness.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
It's a really great way to think about it.
So in her book, does Anita like really get into the nitty-gritty of Edgar's transformation? Like, did she see specific moments that were pivotal for him?
She shares some really personal stories about Edgar's journey.
Okay.
For example, she talks about a time right after he came back from the moon
Yeah.
when he became really introspective, almost withdrawn.
I can imagine like trying to process that whole experience.
He would spend hours just staring at the stars, lost in thought.
Wow, so it wasn't just like a physical journey, it was a deeply internal one, too.
Absolutely.
Did she mention anything specific about what he was grappling with during that time?
Yeah, she talks about a conversation they had where Edgar described feeling deeply connected to everything in the universe.
Mm.
It was like seeing Earth from space had shattered this illusion of separateness for him.
That's powerful.
It really is.
It sounds like the overview effect wasn't just visual for him, it was like a spiritual awakening.
It seems that way.
Did she talk about how that newfound sense of interconnectedness influenced his views on things like UFOs and consciousness?
Absolutely. She says that Edgar's interest in UFOs came from this belief that we're not alone in the universe.
Okay.
He saw the possibility of extraterrestrial life as more evidence of this interconnectedness.
So it wasn't just about little green men and flying saucers, it was about expanding our understanding of life itself
Exactly.
and our place in the cosmos.
Right.
That's pretty profound.
It is.
So we've got this astronaut who walks on the moon
Uh-huh.
and then embarks on this incredible journey of inner exploration, diving into the mysteries of consciousness and the possibility of extraterrestrial life.
And we have his wife, Anita, giving us this incredible firsthand account of his transformation.
Yeah, it's like we have a front row seat to this incredible evolution of thought.
Exactly.
But I'm curious, how did the scientific community react to all of this? I mean, we know mainstream science isn't on board with the UFO claims, but what about his consciousness research? Did his colleagues think he'd gone off the deep end?
Well, Mitchell's work on consciousness, especially with noetic phenomena like remote viewing and psychokinesis, it definitely sparked some controversy.
So not everyone was thrilled with his ideas.
Not exactly, but it's understandable. These are topics that really push the boundaries of what's considered acceptable in science.
Right, they're not exactly mainstream.
One of the main criticisms was that his research wasn't rigorous enough.
Okay.
It lacked the kind of strict scientific methods that are usually required.
So they were saying he wasn't being scientific enough.
Yes, some scientists felt that his research didn't have enough controls and wasn't statistically sound.
Right, the gold standard of scientific research.
Exactly.
So even though he was a scientist himself, his approach to studying consciousness didn't fit the mold.
I think that's fair to say.
Did he ever respond to these criticisms?
He did, actually.
Yeah.
He argued that those traditional scientific methods weren't always the best way to study subjective experiences like consciousness.
So he was acknowledging the limitations of the traditional approach.
Yeah, he believed that we needed new ways to explore these realms of human potential.
New ways of doing science, essentially.
Yeah, he called it consciousness-based science.
Consciousness-based science, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was a framework that included the subjective experiences of the observer.
Like factoring in the person's individual perception and feelings?
Exactly. He was trying to create a space within science to study things that had traditionally been more in the realm of philosophy or spirituality.
It sounds like he was a real visionary, trying to expand the scope of scientific inquiry.
I think that's a great way to put it.
So we have Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut who walked on the moon, and then takes this incredible journey into inner exploration, delving into consciousness, the possibility of alien life, and facing resistance from the scientific community along the way.
It's an incredible story.
It really is.
And I think we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, there's so much more to uncover.
Especially with Anita Mitchell's book giving us this intimate look at his transformation.
Right, that personal perspective adds a whole new dimension to his story.
It really does.
Well, before we dive into that,
Yeah,
let's take a moment to let this all sink in.
that's a good idea.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
It's a lot to process.
Take a moment. Think about what we've talked about.
Yeah, what stands out to you? What questions does this raise for you?
We'll be back in a bit to delve deeper into Anita Mitchell's book and how she navigated this extraordinary journey alongside her husband.
And what a journey it was.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Now, before we get into Anita Mitchell's perspective,
Right.
I've been thinking about something. We've talked about Mitchell's background as a scientist, his astronaut experience, the UFO claims, the deep dive into consciousness. I mean, how did all that impact his personal life?
That's a great question.
His relationships, his marriage?
Yeah.
It couldn't have been easy for his wife, Anita.
No, I mean, imagine you're married to a guy who goes to the moon,
Right.
comes back, and starts talking about aliens and mind powers.
Yeah.
That's not exactly normal dinner conversation.
Exactly. And we have this amazing source, her book, From Outer Space to Inner Space,
That's a great book.
which seems to be as much about their journey as a couple as it is about Edgar's transformation.
Absolutely.
What kind of insights does she give us into that side of things?
Well, one thing that's really cool about Anita's book is that she doesn't shy away from the complexities of their relationship.
Okay.
She's honest about the challenges, especially when Edgar's views on UFOs and the government went public.
Yeah, I bet that caused a lot of tension.
It did. There was definitely pressure and scrutiny.
People probably thought he lost it after coming back from space.
Some people did. But what's remarkable is how Anita writes about it all with love and understanding.
It sounds like she was really supportive.
She doesn't downplay the difficulties, but she really emphasizes Edgar's genuine desire to understand these big questions, even if his path was, well, unconventional.
Did she ever have doubts or concerns about his pursuits? I mean, especially the UFO stuff.
She does mention moments of doubt, especially when Edgar's public statements started attracting negative attention.
Right. It probably impacted their lives in a big way.
It did. She worried about his reputation and how it would affect their family.
I can imagine.
It makes you wonder, what was it like for her to watch the man she loved go through such a dramatic shift?
Did she feel like she was losing him in a way?
There were parts where she describes feeling bewildered, especially as Edgar got deeper into his research on consciousness and aliens.
It's almost like they were on two separate journeys.
That's a great way to put it.
One outward into space.
And the other inward into the mind.
Did they ever manage to bridge that gap?
It seems like finding that bridge became a crucial part of their journey as a couple.
Okay.
Anita talks about making a conscious effort to understand Edgar's new interests, even if she didn't always agree.
That's really admirable.
She went to conferences with him, read books on consciousness and quantum physics,
Wow.
even participated in some of his research experiments.
So she was really committed to staying connected with him.
It seems that way, and it seems like her willingness to engage with his ideas, even the ones that were outside her comfort zone, it actually strengthened their bond.
That's really beautiful.
They were able to have these open and honest conversations about their different perspectives.
Which ultimately brought them closer together.
It seems so. It's a real testament to the power of love and understanding.
Yeah, it's easy to imagine their marriage falling apart under that kind of pressure.
Absolutely.
But they chose to work through it together.
And Anita's book really captures the resilience as a couple.
This whole conversation is making me think about the human side of scientific exploration.
That's an important point.
We often focus on the discoveries and the technology, but we rarely get to see the personal stories, the impact on the people involved.
And Anita's book gives us that human perspective.
It reminds us that scientists are people too.
With lives and relationships and challenges.
It humanizes the whole scientific endeavor.
Exactly.
It shows that even the most extraordinary pursuits are driven by human emotions.
Curiosity. The desire to understand our place in the universe.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is.
I'm struck by the idea that Edgar's exploration of consciousness and his focus on interconnectedness might have been influenced by his own desire to connect with his wife on a deeper level.
That's an interesting thought.
As their lives were changing so dramatically.
I mean, the overview effect itself is about recognizing interconnectedness.
Right.
So maybe that experience heightened his awareness of the importance of connection, not just in a cosmic sense, but also in his personal life.
It's like his scientific pursuits and his personal life were intertwined in ways he might not have even realized.
It's definitely a possibility.
This is giving me so much to think about.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, revealing more and more complexity with each new piece of information.
Exactly.
And that's what's so great about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We go beyond the surface level.
Right.
We explore the intersection of science, spirituality, and these deeply personal journeys.
And we have sources like Anita Mitchell's book that offer such intimate glimpses into these extraordinary experiences.
It's not every day we get to see this side of a story as impactful as Edgar Mitchell's.
Absolutely.
It's a real privilege.
So with all of this in mind, let's shift our focus back to the scientific community's reaction to Mitchell's work.
Okay.
We've talked about the skepticism around his UFO claims,
Right.
but I'm curious about how his research on consciousness was received.
Well, as you might expect, his work on consciousness, especially focusing on things like remote viewing and psychokinesis, it caused quite a stir in the scientific community.
I can imagine those topics tend to ruffle some feathers.
They do. A lot of scientists felt it wasn't real science.
What were their main criticisms?
A lot of them said his research wasn't rigorous enough, that it lacked scientific methodology and relied too heavily on anecdotal evidence.
So they were basically saying he wasn't being scientific enough.
That was a big part of it. They argued that a lot of the phenomena he was studying like ESP or telepathy, could be explained by more conventional scientific principles.
So they thought he was jumping to conclusions.
In a way, yeah, they wanted to see more evidence, more controlled experiments, more data.
But he was a trained scientist himself, right?
He was, but his approach to studying consciousness didn't always align with the prevailing scientific paradigm.
So he was kind of a maverick, going against the grain.
You could say that, but to be fair to Mitchell, he did address these criticisms. He argued that traditional scientific methods weren't always suitable for studying subjective experiences like consciousness.
So he wasn't just ignoring the criticism, he was engaging with it.
He was, and he proposed alternative methods, what he called consciousness-based science.
Consciousness-based science, we've heard that before.
Yeah, it was a framework that took into account the subjective experiences of the observer as an integral part of the research process.
That's really fascinating. He was trying to broaden the scope of scientific inquiry.
I think that's a great way to put it.
It sounds like he was a real visionary, pushing the boundaries of science.
He was. He wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, even if it meant facing criticism from his peers.
It's inspiring to see someone with his credentials willing to take those risks.
It is. He dared to venture into the unknown, to ask the big questions.
And that's ultimately what makes Edgar Mitchell's story so compelling.
It's a reminder that true scientific inquiry is about more than just following established methods.
It's about a relentless pursuit of truth.
Even if that pursuit leads you down unconventional paths.
Exactly, and that's precisely what Edgar Mitchell did.
He didn't shy away from the big questions.
The mysteries that have captivated humanity for centuries.
He embraced them, explored them.
And challenged us to expand our understanding of what's possible.
And in a way, that's his greatest legacy.
Well said.
His courage, his curiosity, his willingness to challenge conventional thinking.
It's an inspiration to us all.
It really is.
We're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into Edgar Mitchell.
What a journey.
Seriously, from astronaut to, consciousness explorer, controversial claims, the whole thing.
Yeah, his life was pretty wild.
Okay, so big takeaways. What can we learn from Mitchell, even if we don't agree with everything he said?
You know, I think one of the most important things is that he wasn't afraid to question assumptions.
Right, not just accepting things at face value.
Exactly. Whether it was the nature of reality, aliens, the power of the mind, he reminds us that real exploration means being willing to question what we think we know.
So not just blindly believing what we're told.
Right. Even if it comes from scientists or the government, we got to be critical thinkers.
Critical thinking, that's huge, especially now when there's so much information out there.
It is. We need to be able to figure out what's credible, what's not, look at evidence, form our own opinions.
I'm also struck by his sense of wonder. He approached everything with this curiosity.
Oh, absolutely.
Can we cultivate that, even if we haven't been to space?
Totally. That sense of wonder is in all of us. It's what makes us want to explore and learn.
Yeah.
We can nurture it by staying curious, asking questions, trying new things, being open to being amazed by the universe.
So it's not just about knowing stuff, it's about how we approach life.
Right. Being open to new possibilities.
Okay, I'm seeing some themes here. Questioning assumptions, being curious, embracing the unknown.
Those are good ones.
But there's one more thing. We've talked a lot about the science. But Mitchell's journey also had this spiritual side.
Definitely.
How did those two things connect for him?
For Mitchell, science and spirituality weren't separate. There were two ways of understanding the universe. He believed that the more we learn about the universe through science, the more we realize how much we don't know, and that can lead to a sense of awe.
Which is often connected to spirituality.
Exactly.
So science wasn't just about cold, hard facts for him.
No, it was about exploring the mysteries of existence, the big questions we all have.
It's like he was trying to bridge the gap between science and spirituality.
I think so. He saw value in both.
Even though it sometimes put him at odds with the scientific community.
It did. But he was a pioneer, forging a new path.
Embracing both scientific inquiry and spiritual exploration.
Exactly.
It's really inspiring. It means we don't have to choose one or the other.
We can find ways to integrate them
into a more complete worldview.
Absolutely. And that's something that resonates with a lot of people today.
It's like Mitchell was ahead of his time in a way.
You could say that.
So, as we think about Edgar Mitchell's legacy,
it's pretty remarkable.
We're left with this feeling of gratitude for his courage, his curiosity, his commitment to pushing the boundaries of understanding.
He was a true visionary, a pioneer who dared to explore the unknown.
And even if we don't agree with everything he said,
We can still learn from him.
be inspired by his sense of adventure.
Absolutely. His life is a reminder that the journey of discovery never ends.
And we can all contribute to our understanding of the world.
In our own unique ways.
So to our listeners, embrace your curiosity, question assumptions, explore new ideas, never stop seeking knowledge.
The universe is full of wonders waiting to be discovered.
And on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into the incredible life of Edgar Mitchell.
What a story.
Thanks for joining us.
It was a pleasure.